Hello, friends. Welcome to the Nexus Podcast. I'm your host, James Dice. Each week, I fire questions at the leaders of the smart buildings industry to try to figure out where we're headed and how we can get there faster without all the marketing fluff. I'm pushing my learning to the limit, and I'm so glad to have you here following along. Episode 56 is a very enlightening conversation with Sabine Lam, Google's Building Operating System Global Lead for Real Estate and Workplace Services. We unpacked what the Building Operating System is, the goals Google has that depend on it, and what needs to change about how buildings are built in order to enable it. I love Sabine's practical approach that seems to be necessitated by sheer scale and just not being able to put up with a lot of the BS in our industry because of that. Without further ado, please enjoy Nexus Podcast episode 56. Hello, Sabine. Welcome to the show. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, James. Thank you so much for having me on this show. I'm actually very much looking forward to this podcast and providing some good information here about what we do at Google. But as an introduction, I'm Sabine Lam. I'm a technology program manager at Google in the real estate and workplace services team. So you'll hear me talk about RUS, that's real estate workplace services. And I've been championing our effort, a program around building operating system with a team of different Googlers from different organizations, how to move forward and implement an infrastructure, a digital building infrastructure for Google portfolio. So very much focus on our portfolio, a Google solution for our corporate real estate, really. So that's what is bringing me here today.
Yeah. And we talked to Keith Berkebin back in November on the podcast. So anyone that hasn't listened to that episode, he works with you, I'm assuming. That was back in episode 29, I think. That was one of our most popular episodes. So I've been wanting to get another Googler back onto the show sometime.
Yeah, we have a few of us on here. So he was focused on the digital building ontology. Mm-hmm. I'm more representative of the facilities and the real estate team on the roof side, and kind of turning to our networking and security and engineering team to provide a solution for RUS. So yeah, that's I work very closely with Keith for sure.
Got it. So before we get into all that, we're going to unpack quite a bit, which I'm really excited to do. Can you talk about your background? How did you get here today?
Yeah, actually, I think it's slightly different from potentially what you've heard so far. Quite varied background. I graduated with electrical engineering degree in France and came to the land of opportunities in the Bay Area to work for Xilinx, which is a semiconductor company. So they make FPGAs, which are field programmable gate arrays, little chips with millions of transistors that you can program to do any function you want to do. Okay. And so it's really nice to drive innovation. You can install them and reprogram them. So it really is installed in a wide range of industries and technology. Right now, you would hear about them on the consumer market, cars, cloud. At the time, I was focused on digital signal processing applied to video processing and telecommunication. So it's all about creating a library of solutions or IP for compression, decompression, transform. We developed a solution for 3G base station at the time. So and as I thought about it, I'm like, okay, here's a few buzzwords that are actually used today for building related buzzwords. So, transformation is one thing, but adaptability, where you can reprogram the FPGAs to do something different. So adjusting, and then obviously digital, as in digital building as opposed to digital signal processing, but the understanding that technology can do amazing things, right? And so I think that gave me that view of the world of this little tiny chip here can do amazing, and has amazing capabilities. And then sometime when I look at the building automation system, like, I think we can do more, right? So they always wanting more out of this. In a process, so I worked for Xilinx for 12 years, and during that time I had 3 kids. So I got to the point where work and kids was too much, and I stopped working for 7 years to raise my kids and work on the other side of my brain. So I focused on woodworking and glass blowing, and cool. We remodeled our house, and I built my cabinets and furniture. poured concrete, did all kind of really fun kind of 3D things. That was really entertaining and rewarding in some ways. Definitely not a good place to make a living. It's really hard to make a living in anything that's kind of artistic related. And then I quickly realized that I had to go back into, if I ever wanted to go back in high tech, I kind of had to get back into it. So after 6 years or so, I started looking for a job and took some classes for leadership in energy and environmental design, PMP, etc. And it took me a while, but I did get a job at Google as an intern of all things. So remember when the movie The Intern came out?
Yeah.
The 40-year-old guy that were being an intern, that was me. So I came in, actually, a neighbor of ours, Mary Davich, was working for Google as a green team consultant. She's actually very well known for the workplace environment. And so Mary hired me to develop a solution around healthy material. So at the time, we wanted to make sure that every construction material in our building did not contain chemicals of concerns. So we created a database of those material, like the paint, the carpet, the table, this and that, and reached out to the manufacturer to understand what was the composition of that material, and was there any chemicals of concern within that material. If there was chemicals of concerns, we could not install it in our building. And so it was really just creating this database with interaction between the manufacturer in adding their information, and then the construction team, who then could pull from that list of material to decide what to install within the building. And the really cool thing about it is you realize that the industry did not know what was in there in that paint, right? They had no idea, and they had never looked into it. And they had to go down to talk to their supply chain to find out what is this made of. And when they realized what it was made of, and realized that it was bad for the environment, bad for your health, bad for all those different reasons, they actually changed it. And so that was kind of my introduction to Google, who, like, so much as in the high-tech world, semiconductor world, you zero in on one solution, you work as fast as you can on that one solution, and you hope to be first to market. With Google, you have that opportunity to look at everything. And so we looked at every single material. Can you imagine in a building, you have thousands of material. You look at everything and you see which industry is actually willing to make a change. And so we made a lot of progress with paints and with carpets and, some of the furniture. And right there, just, influence the industry to produce better material and create a better environment for the employees. And so that was what's called the Healthy Material Tool, or Portico. From there, I moved into a team called Technology Program Manager, which is, I'm still in that team today. But we work with different business within Ruse, and the team I work with was the facilities team. And so I'm joke about it, but about 5 years ago is when I learned how to spell BMS and understand HVAC system. So, I work with a facilities team around what tool might they need to be more efficient with the operation of the building. And around that time, I started working with Kathy Farrington, which you mentioned earlier. And Kathy has a lot, more bench depth in construction and operation and building operation, et cetera. And so we started looking at how do we make our building better in many different ways, and kind of focus on this digital building concept and creating a solution for Google. So Kathy and I and a few other from different organizations created this program that we call the BOS program, Building Operating System program, and kind of like bottom up, right? Decided to focus on it, propose a solution, or at least highlight where the concerns are, propose a solution, and move forward. And then since then, this program has grown quite a bit, and we're starting to have solutions that are worth sharing. And yeah, that's where I am today. And, as I mentioned earlier, I want to impress with, I don't have the depth, and I'm not going to impress with what happened in the past. That's not me, but certainly for how we move forward, what's done today and how we move forward, and, kind of moving OT towards this IT world. There's a lot of interesting things that we're doing that I think I can share information on. So.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to do that. That's a really cool background. So I'm assuming you learned when you were going through all the different off-gassing, for lack of a better term, of all the materials. You probably learned that Google has quite a bit of pull in terms of the supply chain, right? The scale of Google, right? Are you able to take those sort of lessons and apply them to what you're doing now with buildings?
Yeah, so it's exactly the same thing. You feel like you're tackling an impossible problem,
Hmm.
right? Because you're looking at such a broad set of solution, or in our case now we're looking at such a broad set of manufacturer and so many devices in our building, and every building is different. How can you ever address that? And I think the experience with the healthy material was very similar. We just address everything and then move forward with whomever is willing to move forward with you, right? And it could be at a regional level, or a certain manufacturer understand what you want to accomplish. They totally buy into it and they move forward. Some others, not so much. You keep them up to date, but you don't hold back. You just move forward with whomever is willing to move forward. And so that absolutely applies with the building operating system solution that we have today, and our involvement with manufacturers and within Google as well. We'll see how different regions move at different speed, different construction team move at different speed, different facilities, operation team embrace the solution more than others. It's quite interesting. And so we're large enough that we always find someone who's interested, and we have work to do, right?
Yeah.
To make
And we were talking a little bit before we hit record about how I feel like you guys are one of the first ones that are sort of pushing the marketplace a little bit in a bunch of different ways. But one of the reasons I'm really excited about that is I feel like there's been a lot of obviously inertia and sort of slow movement from, vast quantities of people in our supply chain in buildings, right? And so once they realize that they can't get jobs unless they start to meet some of these criteria, I think that's going to be an important driver for change in the industry.
The carrot is quite important, right? When you talk to a manufacturer and you have a 1 million square feet project at the end of the tunnel, do you want to work with us to be able to bid on this project, or you don't want to work with us? And for us, at least for this team that's leading the program, it's all about being technology agnostic. We just look for the best solution, the latest and the best solution that follows our criteria, and those criteria are always evolving. So it's never a stable solution. Even when you're not in forever, right? We'll continue to evaluate the solutions against others. And so it's an interesting position to be at Google for sure. I recognize there's things we can do that a lot of other companies can't necessarily do, right? But hopefully we're using it the right way. I feel the company we work with, and we'll go through what is important to Google, but one of them being cybersecurity. It's a win-win situation. Anyone we work with that is going to focus on making their device more cyber secure is going to serve the entire industry, right? It's not just specific to Google. So
absolutely, I love it. Before we get into that, can you talk, just like give people context on the actual portfolio itself? Like, all I know is there's a ton of buildings, you guys are doing a ton of construction, and there's also a lot of data centers. That's all I know. Can you give us a little bit more context?
Yeah, exactly. So we're saying Google is big. Well, how big is it? We're shy of 700 buildings. So that is not including data center. The data center is managed very separately from corporate real estate. So I'll focus on corporate real estate. So, short of 700 buildings across 54 countries, 200 cities, close to 200 cities, for about 40 million square feet of real estate space. And I believe, that I've heard we're one of the largest real estate owner in the US. So that gives us quite a large footprint. Some of it is leased, some of it is owned, some of it is full tenant, some of it is just a few floors. It's really a mixed bag of types of buildings, size, location. And then, some buildings we operate, some buildings the landlord operates. So there's just about everything out there for us to play with. And the solution we're putting together is for the entire portfolio. So there's no building left behind, as far as we're concerned. And the other concept is every Googler is important. We can't focus on one region more than another. We could never go and say you are more important in this region than you are in this other region. And so we're really trying to be, Google is big in equity and all that stuff, and it applies to our building strategy as well. So that's quite interesting too.
Really cool. So let's kind of dig into it. So I want to start with like the overall sort of technology vision. You guys call it digital buildings. So like, what are you trying to accomplish with technology in your buildings?
Yeah. So I thought I'd pull out my mission statement, because you know how hard it is to put a mission statement together and then you never use it. So here's my chance to use it. I'll just read the sentence and then pull out like 4 main points that are very representative of what we're trying to accomplish. But it's to maximize the value of Google real estate investment by securely connecting spaces to enable data-driven execution and tailored user experience. And so the very first one is the value of Google real estate, and basically it relates to the $10+ billion investment that we have in real estate and data center. And so how do we make sure that we get the most value throughout the life cycle of the building and avoid any kind of negative spend while we're optimizing the space and the health and the performance, right? So that's kind of maximizing the value of that expense. Securely connecting spaces, I mean, security is number one. I would say that is what is moving this program forward. The force behind it is definitely coming from the cybersecurity aspect of it. That is a problem that's well understood by our security and networking team, and they have the power to move it forward, almost ahead of how real estate team is realizing the value of it. You know what I mean? It's kind of pushed by security more so than the operation team realizing how much of a difference we can make. So that is securely connecting the spaces, is around connecting each building, the floor, the equipment. And you think of it as, it's not looking at one building anymore. We're looking at campuses like San Jose, where you have mixed use spaces and multitude of spaces that are much more complex than just one building. And so how do you integrate the transportation program and the food and everything in a very secure way? The other one is to enable data-driven execution. Of course, Google, we like data, we make data-driven decisions. And so how do we get access to this data for the entire portfolio, knowing that every one of our buildings is different? Pull this information, make it available in one place and make decisions out of that information. And then tailored user experience. This is really the ruse aspect of it, right? Adapting the building for an optimal experience and productivity to the Googlers. So that's a mission statement and really 4 points. The way we're going about it is really, again, delivering cyber compliant solution, collecting that data and to get inside of the physical space, and then supporting innovation. And that goes into, again, 2 more categories. There's the campus vision from the real estate team, and then there's the operational efficiency. The campus vision is the space has to be adaptable. We have mixed use spaces. We want to use the space during the day and at night in different ways, right? Again, when you think about San Jose, there'll be a mix of public open space along with very private, work areas. There are restaurants and stores and I think art centers and, lodging area and an office, and all of them are mixed together. And there's the concept of, we're spending a lot of money in those offices. Why are we only using them from 8 to 5? Can we use now that space in the evening? But the space that was like a tech center during the day, can that become like a theater at night, right? Or like, how do you change that space to utilize it 24/7 if you can, or at least more than 1 hour? So the private space has to become a public space. This 8 to 5 pre-program of your HVAC system won't work. Your building needs to adjust and adapt to the way it's occupied. So there's a lot around adaptability of the space, around minimizing the environmental footprint that's kind of related to sustainability, and making the experience for the user just a fantastic experience so they can come and be productive and collaborate with other Googlers. So that's all like the campus vision. On the operational side, it's around, again, controlling cybersecurity. So you'll see that, there's a lot of work around moving all those devices onto our corp network. So we have visibility and manageability of all those systems. We don't believe in just putting them on the side and trying to ignore it, that we want to see them. And along the way, if we're going to see them, it has to be done. We have some requirements that those systems need to meet. And then the support costs, so everything around predictive real-time response and predictive analysis and forecasting, et cetera, for the operation. So how to use the data for optimized operation. Yeah, so that's a high level, like what is driving the effort. And, the way to get there requires change, right? It requires change to the way we build our building, and that's complex. And I think you put one of that slide, I feel like we've used that slide for years now, where we have the vertical versus the horizontal. And it's just a very simple slide, but it is a very real and still applicable slide that we're living by.
Yeah I mean, that's really helpful to hear, like, the outcomes you're going for. especially before we dive into like the nerdier type of stuff. Real quick though, I've been writing and sort of digging into this 24/7 clean carbon-free energy goal that Google has put out. How does that relate to the goals you're trying to accomplish in your group? Are they tied together in some way? How do you think about that?
So yeah, one of the goal for 24/7 means that every hour of every day of every year, you need to know what your consumption is, right? So you can eliminate it, and you can source enough carbon-free energy nearby, so within the same location or region at every hour of the day. Well, how do we know our energy consumption every hour of the day? Today, we don't know it, I mean, and previous goals have been around. In 2007, we talked about being carbon neutral. The concept was to offset emission. So at the time, we would just know, okay, how much energy have we spent for the entire year? And you just go to your PG&E bills or whatever the landlord charged you, you add that up, and then you purchase enough carbon offsets and renewable energy to bring kind of your net operational emissions to zero. So that was from 2007 on. Then it was 100% renewable since 2017, and it was about reducing emissions. So again, that one was about purchasing enough renewable energy to match the annual electricity use, but that was on an annual basis, maybe monthly basis, right? So we've been tracking consumption on a monthly basis. Some of it a little bit automated, a lot of it just, hello facilities, can you fill up this form and tell me what your PG&E bill looks like, right? And fill it here manually, right? And if you don't enter it, well, you can't do that. If it's 24/7, we need to automatically get access to that information. And so the infrastructure we're putting in place is about putting some hardware within the building that is capable of sending the data directly to our cloud on an hourly basis. With that, it also means negotiation with a landlord, right? Because like I say, we have lease building. How do we get access to that information? So there's a lot of effort around the clause that we include in our lease negotiation. And I think that's a very powerful one too. And then the landlord should start becoming familiar with that, right? We are now requesting that our space are cyber secure, that we get access to data, and wherever possible that we operate our building. We feel like we have a lot more opportunity if we can operate our buildings, or at least our floors. And so we organize kind of our portfolio in different models. There's a model that is fully operated by the landlord. There's only so much we can do, but at least, here are best practices. Please keep our Googlers safe and follow those guidelines, right? But there's nothing we can really enforce. It's not ours. We can't see the data. So it's just a high level conversation. And then there's models where we can operate our Google floors or operate the entire building.
Okay.
For all models, whatever we're not operating, we're still asking the landlord to give us access to some level of data. I think energy data, is not a complex one that the landlord would argue against. Where it becomes more controversial potentially is when we start looking at HVAC data and others, where I think it comes across as a threat as opposed to an opportunity. We have, we're looking at our entire portfolio. We might find things in this building. We want to understand how well our building is operating, and likely we can return information to the landlord saying, maybe you're doing well, you're not doing well. Can you improve here or there? But yeah, absolutely, the sustainability goal. Sustainability has always been a core value to Google for decades, and I think now it's requiring technology for us to pass it. We're claiming 2030. We got to get stuff in place in time to prove it.
Yeah, I think this is an area where, the Biden administration has come out and said they're going to try to do this in federal buildings as well. This is an area where it's just my opinion, my assessment of the smart buildings nerds don't quite grasp the connection between what they do and these 24/7 goals. So if that's you out there, like, start wrapping your head around this, because it's definitely coming.
It's one also that you can easily measure. And so I kind of have mixed feeling about it, because I feel just saving energy for your building is there's much more complex goal. So you look at it, you've seen the 330, 300?
Yep.
Yeah. And so you're addressing the $3 square foot. In itself, the ROI of it is not mind-boggling. Sustainability is a much better story than energy saving, I think.
Yeah.
And so you want to do well for the environment. As far as Google Google goes, the saving on the energy itself is not a driving factor. I could never go to my CFO and say, oh, look, I'm saving 30% of 0.001% of your spending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sustainability is the right story. That's what we are trying to achieve, and we do. And it's one that's quite easy to measure. The one that's really hard to measure for us is Google productivity,
Yeah.
right? How do we measure it?
How do you measure it?
Well, Googlers have been working very well from home. So, that we've done a lot of surveys. So we do a lot of surveys. And so during work from home, you can look at line of codes, you can look at mental health, a lot of conversation between manager and Googlers. And so it's hard to measure it with data, but you certainly can measure it based on people mental health, code, released, things reviewed, etc. And we measured it back when we were in the office. We've been measuring it throughout the time where we were at home, and adjusted our approach as a result of those surveys. Everything is we're trying to understand and provide the best solution, and around that. So
cool. And real quick before we kind of dive in, what did you learn from this measuring during COVID besides that Googlers were productive at home?
I actually don't think I'm allowed to talk about all those
okay.
all those aspects. So I'd rather not. But I think different jobs do better than others working from home, and the result is we're going to have a mixed model for returning to the office. So we certainly learned that we don't need to be in the office 5 days a week, but we still want to be in the office. There's plenty that needs to be done. We've heard Sundar kind of talk about it a little bit, and it's evolving as we learn more. I think we're really looking to provide flexibility, but
yeah, evolving. That's
exactly. Never always change.
Yes. Hey guys, just another quick note from our sponsor, Nexus Labs, and then we'll get back to the show. This episode is brought to you by Nexus Foundations, our introductory course on the smart buildings industry. If you're new to the industry, this course is for you. If you're an industry vet but want to understand how technology is changing things, this course is also for you. The alumni are raving about the content, which they say pulls it all together, and they also loved getting to meet the other students on the weekly Zoom calls and in the private chat room. You can find out more about the course at courses.nexuslabs.online. All right, back to the interview. So I want to dive into so you talked about the outcomes you're trying to enable. Let's talk about these three sort of specific goals that sort of enable those outcomes, right? So, and I'm kind of keying in on an article that we'll link to that you wrote for Automated Buildings, or you and your team did for Automated Buildings, which has the slide that you referenced earlier on it. So whatever order you want to tackle them in, I want to dive into those sort of three, because I think these are the sorts of changes that you guys are driving on a project by project basis sort of around the world right now, it seems like.
Right. And so the reference you're making between the vertical and the horizontal is, the systems are on their own, they're siloed. It's really hard to integrate. And even if you integrate it for one building, it's really hard to redo it at scale. So we're not going to spend too much time about that. I think a lot of people understand the problem. When we look at horizontal infrastructure, it means that the bottom layer of the stack is all those devices.
Yep.
And so what we're putting in place is, we're saying those devices, we're trying to be as technology agnostic as possible. We want to get raw data from those devices directly, and we want to make sure they're cyber secure. So we have very clear standards around performance-based standards that is shared with the construction team that specifies what we're trying to accomplish with those systems.
Okay.
And the IoT security requirement. And so the IoT security requirement are quite complex. There's actually a list of 100 plus tests that we do for every single IP connected devices.
Wow.
And so in order to automate it, Trevor Paring, I'm sure you'd love talking to him, by the way, Trevor Paring created this platform called DAQ, Device Automated Qualification.
Okay.
And that platform allows you to create tests for those devices. You just connect the device to your laptop and run those tests. So anyone has the ability to create a test of their interest. We have 100 for Google, but maybe another real estate owner has, other things they want to test. They have the ability to write the code for that test and automatically run it on the device. So
Cool.
at this point, out of the 100 tests, some of them have to be manual. About 40% of it is automated. Manufacturer can use this DAC solution and pre-test their device if they wanted to. We're not quite there yet, but that is ideally what we want to enable. It is on GitHub, so it's public and anyone can use it. No one has jumped on it and want to do it themselves. They tend to send the device to us, and we have qualification lab that go through the 100 tests and have it, all the way through security review, pen testing, and all kind of things we're doing before the device is considered qualified. And there's two types of qualification. One is cyber compliant, and one is what we call smart ready. The smart ready device, they are capable of sending data to cloud. And that's using MQTT, in the UDMI format. So the device is smart enough to send the data to cloud directly and cloud IoT. And from cloud IoT, we take the data into our data platform.
Okay.
If the systems, a lot of IP devices don't necessarily have the capability to send data to cloud, they can also connect to a gateway. And now we have smart ready gateway. So think of the sustainability. The meter is connected to a smart ready gateway, like I'm not going to give names. So you connect to a gateway, and the gateway sends the data to cloud. Technology that is not up, that doesn't have the capability, still can connect serially to another and send the data. So, So the one layer is the bottom layer is the hardware, and there's a lot of conversation with manufacturer, and most are very happy to work with us because we are teaching them, at least sharing good practices that are valuable for them. The network is converged network, so we are putting all those devices on the Google corporate network. We don't believe into OT. We believe that we have a networking team that is very strong at supporting the IT network. And there's a segment for it that will be for the OT, the operational technology, but that same team will be able to manage both.
Okay.
And kind of push the technology to really enforce IT principles to the operational technology.
That doesn't surprise me at all. And you've probably learned that there are people in the industry that want to keep them separate and, thinking that way.
I understand it, right? I mean, our IT team, they look at the device and are like, seriously? This is version 4 Android? How is that happening? There are things that it's just so far from the IT world. There's so many things that have to improve that it makes sense to put in if you want to ignore it, it makes sense to put it on a separate network. The problem is then somebody hacks it, you don't know it. And that's a problem for us. We think as far as PR goes, whether someone hacks the HVAC system and doesn't touch Google data, doesn't matter. We've been hacked. Bottom line, we've been hacked, and it's a problem. And so we want visibility of all of it and access to the data as well. And we believe that the industry is ripe for implementing those IT kind of principles. Password, a little post-it by the side of your laptop, not really a good idea. Here's the technology requirement. Here's how we're going to track passwords for every single one of our buildings. So we're putting like very clear solution, remote access, unmanaged network removed, 3G not okay. There's a lot of things that are not okay, and we're providing solution for the operational world while being quite aware that it's an industry that cannot meet all those IT requirements right away, right? So very pragmatic about how we can get there. And so you add a layer of security. If the device cannot be secure, then the network has to do more. And then as you send the data, then there's more layer. There's many, many layers of security to provide the secure environment. Not one thing is enough. But yeah, we work with vendors that can actually get there. But certainly narrows the pool of system we can pick from. So it's kind of a natural standardization for our portfolio. Whereas right now, total snowflake, right? Every building has something different. It I think naturally will be a little more standardized towards solution that can meet the requirement, and it's not all of them, right? So it'll be good.
Okay. So that's the device layer. What's the next layer up from that?
So the device layer, the networking layer, connectivity layer was the second one, and I said it's software-defined network on Faucet. So OT and IT on the same network, and then the data layer. So that's when you hear about the digital building ontology. How do we send the data in a way that we can normalize it and tag it so we can make sense of the information? This data layer not only has like the time series data and information of the registered devices and kind of relationship between all those devices, we can also augment it because it is within our environment We can also augment it with metadata around, and it's in this building and it's in this location. And we have API to our facilities API, HR API, potentially, our badging. So we can complement the information with a lot of PII information that we could not share with a third-party vendor. So that's another reason we want it internal to our company, right? There's a lot of solution out there with this horizontal layer. We're not again, we're not trying to sell anything. We're doing it internally because we need to have access to data that is internal to Google and not shareable with any third-party vendor. Also, we don't want to pay a license for the rest of our life for such a large portfolio. And we think we're pretty darn good with understanding big data and analysis of that big data. So it's an interesting area for us to focus on. But the way we look at it, it's again, just so similarly to me not having a strong background and 30 years of experience in building automation system, the team that is creating this ontology or creating the solution has much more of an IT data modeling type of background, but we're surrounding ourselves with really strong leader in the industry, right? So we don't have the depth, but we're working very closely with people who do have the depth. But because we don't have the depth and we're not locked into one way of doing things, I think we can be very creative about how we address it slightly differently. And I mean, we don't have to talk about Keith, the digital BIM ontology. You already have a podcast on all of that. But when you think about it, he came up with this ontology in a couple of years. And it's at the level where Haystack 4 is just about doing the same thing now with the relationship, right? And it took Haystack 10 to, I mean, that's quite clever, right? To be able to get to a solution, and we want alignment between the different ontology and tagging approach. But I'm quite impressed. Like, in 2 years, you came up with a solution that, the industry has been working on for a while, and we're not, they're each learning from each other and each progressing with each other. So that's really good. Actually, I look at it as healthy competition, right? You want more than one solution, and you always take the best and learn from each other and keep progressing. And very so cool. I think, DBO was inspired by Brick and Haystack, and potentially Haystack was inspired by Brick and DBO, and, and others. And that's how we get to a better solution. All right, so on top of the data layer, then we have an API. Okay. And that's where you run the application on top of it. And the application can be developed in-house, or it can be developed by a third-party vendor. And that's, again, I think on the application level, an area where the industry has much more knowledge around, potentially fault detection or different things than we have in-house. But we can use machine learning in some ways and kind of come up with things that we just kind of throw the algorithm, we throw machine learning on the big data, on a lot of data, and all the anomalies show up, and they happen to be exactly the same as what somebody wrote through, like, pre-coded algorithm, right, of finding faults. So it's quite interesting the way we look at it. So what we've put in place is standards. We have qualification lab. We are using open standards, MQTT is open, UDMI, DBO is released, DAC is released, and there's nothing we're doing that is proprietary. And I think that when we have it, we share it, and it could be implemented on any platform. It's also not technology specific. It's not specific to GCP. The same thing, the same horizontal platform can work on AWS or others. So the very first part, the device connectivity, the data platform, I call that the infrastructure. That's what we need to get in place. And the first two bottom layers, what we need to put in our building during construction. So new construction is very much following some of the standard. Existing building as well, if we can go back, we want to make sure that those devices are moved over to our network. And so we are also addressing our portfolio of existing buildings with a similar approach.
Okay, so is this when you guys say building operating system, is this these, I guess, 4 layers you've talked about, is that the building operating system?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's the 3 layers that makes it the building operating system.
Okay.
And then the application runs on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a group of, we look at it, it's a program. It's not one solution. It's a program of many products and combination of product to create a solution. And
yeah, very cool. And when I read that article that you wrote, it's very clear how much open source is a part of your approach, because like you can do a control F search for open source in that article, and it's like at every layer in multiple places. So that's really cool. I think we're going to be able to benefit as an industry a lot from what you guys are putting together.
Right.
Can you talk about the bulk of that article that I wanted to dig into a little bit more with you was this changing role of the MSI. So given the context of what you guys need in your building, what are you asking of service providers and contractors to help you get there?
Right, right. So, the MSI, and again, I won't pretend to know what MSI have been doing. I will just tell you what we want them to do. And so, I use the word evolving, but it is kind of definitely focused on the security and data-driven focus, where we're trying to move away from OT protocols and replace it all with, communicating with MQTT, UDMI. And so forget BACnet SC. We need the MSIs to understand MQTT. We need them to understand how to register devices in cloud, how to verify that the data is communicating into cloud, and that the data is available on the cloud. And so I kind of break it into three categories. There's the security aspect of it. They are, in our world, they are responsible for reviewing the drawings and ensuring that the technology selected is qualified, or at least qualifiable, and potentially even they are the one qualifying those devices. And so they work very closely with our digital building consultant. The digital building consultant understand what we're trying to accomplish with this building and the use cases, and they kind of propose some solution. The MSI is the one who understand our standards really well and ensure that the solution that has been selected can at least be qualified, or they can qualify it, or we send it to a lab and we qualify it ourselves. But the result has to be that the solution is qualified. And then that solution is capable of sending data to cloud. On the data modeling side of it, they are the one that are creating our building model config file. And so they are the one that take the information from either the BMS or others and creating a building config file. It happens to be in a YAML format in our world. So how you map this information to our digital building ontology, put it in the proper format so we can ingest it into our data lake. And that's a role that is 100% MSI role, very, very manual today, and that has to change. Like, this is not possible. It's a one-time, potentially works, very error prone. And so I think that's the biggest gap. And I think the industry realized that this data mapping and modeling is the biggest gap and the hardest thing to maintain during the whole life cycle of the building. Right now, we're throwing MSIs at it. And then I realized they have to stay once the building opens. The MSI almost needs to stay around, right, to update the information as we go. So, model the building, validate the information is valid and match the as is, right? So the functional description is just aligned with the as built, and try to come up with methodology to ensure the quality of the solution and lasting set of information is accurate. And then the onboarding, that's the concept of this. So security, data modeling, and then onboarding is kind of registering the device to cloud. So being familiar with cloud, understanding how do you provision those systems on our network, how you onboard those devices onto the cloud platform, things like that is also kind of their role. And so you didn't hear me talk about the application itself. It's all about provide the data in a format that I can do something cool with it. But don't worry about the cool part. Just do the first part, which is around.
Got it. You mentioned all the labor that goes into mapping points. So is that something that you guys are able to drive with these sort of manufacturer standards, where we can start to have self-identifying, self-modeling type sort of interoperability, sort of machine-to-machine interoperability? Is that kind of where you're headed as far as forcing standards?
So the modeling itself, we're not discussing modeling with the manufacturer themselves. It's more once the device is in place.
It's like a pet peeve of mine, the industry. I feel like it's something when we talk about interoperability, we're not putting enough onus on the manufacturers themselves to basically say, you guys need to adopt the modeling standards and then basically self-describe your stuff, right?
Right. So we're doing it in a way where we say, if your device is what we call smart ready, you take the data and you send it to us in this UDMI format. universal device management interface, right? Which is not BACnet, but there's very few company or devices that are capable of doing that.
Right.
And so the onus right now is definitely on MSI to do a lot of the work and manual work of data mapping.
Yep.
You know, here's what you get, and here's how we want to call it, and how we want to describe the type of device and that function of the device and how it's connected and what data points are for it. It's not the manufacturer doing that for us.
Yeah. And I think a lot of my frustration, it's like industry level, obviously, but I've also done a lot of that mapping myself. And so the frustration is like, I just don't want anyone else to do it anymore.
Seriously.
Like, we shouldn't have to do this.
And that's what I was telling you, I think my background in digital signal processing, do you think when you have millions of transistors, do you think people manually do things? Like, no, you have an abstract level, things are automated. You don't have people typing hundreds of lines of codes, right? You just have a library, it fits in, it knows what it needs to do, and it's fully automated. And so I'm appalled when I see what's going on, like, what? And is that acceptable? This is not acceptable. And very quickly, it's just not scalable for Google. So it's not possible. Not only it's not acceptable, on top of that, I can't use it because our portfolio is global and it's 700 building, and absolutely I cannot put enough people, there's not enough people in the world to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but I don't think everybody in the world wants to focus on manually creating this config file.
Yeah. I get emails daily about people hiring integration engineers. I love the emails because I love to see that the companies in my, the Nexus network are growing, and that's amazing. It's just like, it's tough to know that that's the work that we're hiring for. And I know there are very few people out there that are looking for a job and able to do that work as well. Yeah. So it's just such a huge bottleneck.
And I think they're doing that because they're solving for one problem for one building, and it's not reproducible, right? And so
yeah, totally agree. So that was a fascinating look at all those layers. Thank you for taking us through that. So you mentioned, at the top of the BOS is this API that then feeds the different applications. Can you talk about like what applications you're using? Are these dashboards, like reporting tools, FDD? Like what's the application sort of stack look like? What's Google's app store for your building?
So, not great. Well, because here it is, right? It would be, I think the temptation is to develop the application. I don't care about the application if I don't have my building data. So please use my engineering resource to solve the hard problem of ingesting the data.
Totally.
And then I know what we know what the use cases are. And it looks great to have a dashboard and full detection, all that stuff. But honestly, there's a lot of solution out there, and it is not the hardest problem. And so just like everybody else, I think I was listening to your podcast about this shiny object. Well, this shiny object is absolutely taking your engineers away from the hard problem. And so that was kind of definitely hard to prioritize even within Google and with our engineering team. Please ignore the application and the pretty dashboard. Focus on ingestion, focus on getting this DBO working, on automating this onboarding process, and getting data from my entire portfolio, not just from one region in the data platform. Absolutely. Then I know we'll do a lot of stuff. So this to provide an excuse to the fact that we don't have a lot of application, but we have looked at machine learning, anomaly detection for full detection, and in area where in buildings where we have data, the service provider is pulling data from the data lake, and you identify the type of area you're looking for, and so you search for a certain condition.
Oh, just fault detection diagnosis.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, as opposed to machine learning, it doesn't know anything. It's just finding what is functioning differently in one VAV versus the other. Yeah. That's how it pulls it. Whereas the other one is saying, if it's hot and cold at the same time, send me an alarm or something saying I'm wasting energy. Anyway, so we're doing both at the same time, and we can compare it. It's quite interesting. Cool. I think one that is very interesting and has been published, it's outside of our group. It is from DeepMind, the industrial adaptive control platform. Basically, the DeepMind has released this kind of real-time adjustment and optimization of central chilled and hot water plants.
Oh, okay.
And so it was primarily implemented on data center, but now we're porting it to corporate real estate. And so that's AI driven application. And the beauty of it is not only you analyze it, you actually turn around and overwrite the systems, which is where we want to go, right? You know, I talk about the layers as a one way, but the reality is we also come back down, right? The solution we're providing is bidirectional, where the idea is we analyze the data and then we turn around and make those updates directly onto the controllers and kind of data set points or whatever we need to do real time. So this one is one that's been part of some of the announcement saying that we're providing solution. This adaptive control platform is one of them that was developed and is being shared with different vendors and building management software providers and data center operators and others. But that's the only one that we have publicly announced and sold. On our side, there's dashboard. There's the sustainability team is interested in viewing the energy consumption, so we do a dashboard for them. But that'll be kind of the next step in my mind. Again, I think we need our building data. We need to prove that our stack is actually working at scale for many different types of building, and then we can go and have a lot of fun with the applications. And,
How do you think about, and maybe you haven't yet, based on that answer you just gave, the employee facing applications? So this is a very hot area right now, a bunch of companies getting invested in and bought, and all of the different, maybe you guys have your own already that you're planning on integrating in. So how do you think about that piece of it?
As the employee controlling the environment?
Controlling the environment, but also just like there's these, that's one capability of that type of app. Others are just like wayfinding and access control through your phone, engagement, amenities, like those types of things that bring into the workplace.
So that there is a lot, there is work outside of this particular effort with wayfinding. You actually, you just need to know the layout of the building and some data from your location. Mm-hmm. A big thing at Google is privacy. So tracking people is a hard thing to have approved from legal data privacy and employee policy, things like that. So we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. But the concept of where's your room and how you get to this conference room based on where you are, we have that solution internally. A lot of it is probably opt-in. And then the badges, it's really hard to get information on who's in the building or not in the building. Again, it's kind of too much of tracking of the employees. So we're doing it very consciously and very carefully, and making sure that our employees and are okay with our approach anytime we do anything like that. But as far as getting the employees to adjust the space to their preferences, it's certainly a long-term goal. But you talk to facilities, they don't like that, and sustainability. Maybe not. I'm going to come in, I'm going to blast the heater, and then you're going to come after me and you're going to blast the cooler. I don't think it's, it might not be great. So I would say honestly, we haven't solved it for any of that. It'd be great. I don't know if it's actually applicable, to be confirmed.
Totally. Yeah, this is awesome to hear. I just feel like there's so much going on in that space right now that not enough people are saying like, wait, like privacy, or wait, do employees even want this? Like there's a bunch of things that I'm just kind of like skeptical about that whole sphere on. So
I mean, even like the space, if we could just provide a consistent temperature within the building. Just do that, right? Start there. Exactly. I'll wear a turtleneck, you wear a t-shirt, I'm happy, you're happy, everybody's happy. Just keep this consistent airflow and we're good to go.
But the other way, step 2 is then like do that only when people are there, right?
Exactly.
Or only in the rooms that people are there on. That's step 2. And like if we get there, like we're still so long from getting there that it's like, okay, tell me when we're there, and then now we can talk about something cooler than that.
No, it always makes me laugh when we talk about facial recognition, and it can decide what mood you're in and what coffee you're going to need that morning. And I'm thinking, I don't know what coffee I want, or if I want coffee right now, how can the machine does it? So yeah, we're quite, I think we're quite pragmatic, and again, we can't, because we're looking at it for the entire portfolio, we just can't jump on one quick solution that sounds fun.
Totally.
It has to be proven. It has to be, there's a lot of testing, a lot of functional testing of the solution. What is the business case? Like, we go through like quite a thorough process before we put something in our building. At least we try. I don't know everything about all buildings, but that's the goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fascinating. What are you looking forward to the rest of the year?
Oh, well, can we go back into our buildings?
Yeah.
Getting, leaving my house. Cybersecurity is priority number one. We got, we have a lot of support in the area. So there's something we're going to be working on towards the end of the year and next year.
Okay.
2021, there's only 6-7 months left. It's almost over. What do you mean? How about 2022?
You can answer that one next.
So yeah, 2022 is, the stack that we're talking about. We've proven it in a small area. Let's make sure like we can turn to the world and say, yeah, it's working. And here is, half of our portfolio is on it. And that's success. And if we can do it, then anybody can do it, because we don't have an easy portfolio.
Absolutely.
So that would be fun. And then, start focusing on some cool application if we can. Yeah. I mean, it would be a good sign that we've solved the other problems.
All right. Well, the next Google show we do, we'll have to talk about implementation. You guys have it all designed, you piloted it. Now it's time to scale it up. And I'm sure that will have its own, set of lessons and strategies and all that. So we'll just keep going with this Google series and just follow you guys as you go. That sounds fun.
That's awesome. Sounds great. Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. All right, friends, thanks for listening to this episode of the Nexus Podcast. For more episodes like this and to get the weekly Nexus newsletter, which, by the way, readers have said is the best way to stay up to date on the future of the smart buildings industry, please subscribe at nexuslabs.online. You can find the show notes for this conversation there as well. Have a great day.